I'm Bob Davis. I'm the new state director for Oklahoma. And I thought that y'all might be interested in hearing how the Oklahoma team has spent 2024 investigating what we're seeing over our great state of Oklahoma. So I put together a brief slide presentation to summarize our activities. Hope you find it informative. In this presentation, we'll be looking at the comparison of our total cases submitted yearly for the past 10 years. And then we'll focus on the activity for the last 12 months. And we'll break this activity down by disposition. And I will tell you what that means and give you definitions for the various dispositions that we use when we're working our cases. Next, we'll look at what kind of objects are being misidentified as UFOs. And then we'll look at the objects that we call unknowns, which are objects we can't identify. And we'll look at the unknowns in terms of their shape and their geographical distribution across the state. Finally, I'll share some photos and have a couple videos of some interesting cases that we worked last year. Let me bring up my annotation thing. Okay, so this slide shows our caseload for the last 10 years. And as you can see, for a period, we were pretty consistent with about 64 cases per year. And you can also see that we had peaks in 2015 and in 2022 and 2023. And then we had a drop in our cases in 2024. And the peaks are most likely a result of increased media coverage and a change in the public perception. And I'll demonstrate that in the next slide. And in 2024, we think that our drop in sightings is mainly due to our database being offline for about 3 months. And the next slide will help us illustrate that. Well, this slide, despite being kind of busy, it contains a wealth of information. First, you'll notice that normally, if we take the monthly average by year, we normally average around 5 or 6 cases a month, okay, except for in those years where we peaked. And then, of course, last year we had a big dip in our average. And you'll see a spike in February of 23. And if you recall, it was in February 23 that those high altitude Chinese balloons traversed the American airspace. So I'm suspecting with that being in the news, everyone was outside looking at the sky. And that's why we had more reports at that time. And this peak right in this area here in the summer and fall, that was when in July of 2023, that's when they had the congressional hearings where David Grush, Ryan Graves, and David Fravor testified. So I suspect this is, again, media coverage got more people out looking to the skies. The spike that occurred here in June of 2015, that could possibly be a result of the reports that were coming in from the US Navy pilots on the East Coast. And then we see this dramatic drop here in these 3 months in 2024, in February, March, and April. And that was when our database went down. And so I'm pretty confident that accounts for why we had a drop at that time. So last year, we had a total of 48 cases submitted, and we completed all 48 of them. And that includes, we worked a backlog of cases that resulted from the database being down. So we have 0 cases in progress from last year. Now, right now, so far this year, we've had 13 cases. We've completed 11, and we have 2 cases in progress. So these are the dispositions. When we complete our report, each case we assign a disposition, and the disposition is the conclusion that the investigator draws based on the evidence, the data provided. And there's 5 categories. There's IFO, which is identified flying objects. There's unknowns, insufficient data, information only, and hoaxes. And the next 3 slides, I'm going to provide definitions for each of these 3 categories, or all of these 5 categories. So IFO, or identified flying objects, are natural or man-made objects that have been misidentified by our witnesses. This category is further divided into 3 subcategories: IFO natural phenomenon, IFO man-made, and IFO other. IFO natural phenomenon include objects such as stars and planets, the moons, meteors, fireballs, comets, atmospheric phenomenon, such as sundogs, birds, insects, lens flares, and reflections. And examples of IFO man-made are conventional aircraft, military aircraft, blimps, balloons, rockets, and satellites. And according to the State Director's Handbook, IFO other, this is a category that's reserved for submissions that don't include a UFO or UFO-related entity. And examples of this would be Bigfoot or other cryptids, apparitions, or orbs. Now, these are orbs that are not related to UFO encounters. Now, a couple other things to note here is that the investigator doesn't have to be 100% sure that it's IFO. He just needs to have at least an 80 to 85% confidence. And normally about 70% of our cases will fall into this category. Then we have the unknowns, and the unknowns fall into 2 broad categories: unknown UAV, or unknown aerial vehicle, and unknown other. Now, to be classified as an unknown aerial vehicle, the object has to appear to have some sort of structure to it. And otherwise, it's going to be classified as an unknown other. And examples of unknown others would be orbs, odd moving lights, strange floating objects, and strange openings in the sky. Now, normally about 30% of our cases will fall into this category. And then we have the next 2 categories are insufficient data and information only. Now, when investigating any report, it's very important that we obtain at least 4 pieces of information. We need to know the exact date, time, location, and the direction that the witness was facing. Oftentimes, these items will be missing or might be approximations. So if we cannot contact the witness to obtain this missing data, this is when we assign it a disposition of insufficient data. And in other instances, we're able to contact a witness and interview the witness, but it might have been an event that happened in the witness during the witness's childhood, and they don't recall the exact date or the month or the year. And this is when we would assign it an information only. And a 5th category that's not listed here is the category of a hoax. And a hoax, an example of a hoax might be a staged event or a video or a photograph that has intentionally been altered. So here's the breakdown of our cases for last year by disposition. So out of our 48 cases, 21 cases were IFO, or identified. We had 15 unknowns, 3 insufficient data, and 8 information only. So this figures out to be, that's about 44% of the cases. And I believe this was around 30% of the cases that were reported. So what objects are being misidentified? As you can see from this slide, the majority of the misidentified objects are man-made objects such as spacecraft. We have the SpaceX and the Falcon 9, the ISS and satellites. We also have lens reflections and flares and aircraft that account for a large portion of the misidentified objects. And then there's a smattering of other objects. I had one case that was a mylar balloon, and I had one case that were birds, and several of us had cases with stars that were misidentified. So these are the next 2 slides are the list of all the unknowns for last year. And these cases are ones that could not be matched to a man-made or a natural phenomenon. And therefore, they were classified as unknowns. And when analyzing the unknowns, there are a lot of different aspects we could consider. We could look for trends regarding the time of day, the direction, the color, and so on. And for this presentation, what we're going to concentrate on is we're going to explore the unknowns in terms of their shape and their geographic distribution. So in terms of shape, it's interesting to note that a large majority of the unknowns fall into shapes that are circular in nature. You know, so we have stars, circles, ovals, spheres, fireballs, and disks. So the majority of the unknowns are circular in shape. And we do have a few that are square and rectangular, and then other shapes. I think I even had a case that was a squid-like, had a squid-like appendages. And this slide shows the geographic distribution of all the unknowns for Oklahoma. At first glance, it looks like, you know, we've got a big concentration along Interstate 35. And while that is true, that's mainly because the way our reports are submitted, the geographic location is determined by the nearest city as reported by the witness. And so the observations are naturally going to occur in, are going to cluster around populated areas, which often occur along major highways like I-35 and then I-44. Now I'm going to share a couple cases that we worked last year that were interesting. This first one was a case that was submitted by a witness in the city of Choctaw. And this is a still shot taken from a video that he submitted. And over here, I've zoomed in and enlarged it. And the interesting thing about this case is, much like the case that Janet is working right now, this witness had videos from 2 different vantage points because he lived at 2 different addresses in Choctaw. And I was able to triangulate the position of these orbs that he was seeing. And when we had our meet and greet last year, I went down to Oklahoma City early and went to the location where these orbs were triangulated to try and see if I could identify maybe some radio towers or something that could account for these. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop the slide presentation, and I'm going to actually show you that video. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can see that right off the bat, let's see, I'll rewind that. Let's watch that again. And I'm going to pause it. There's a number of things I want to point out about this. One thing is, this is a really good video because he got this house in the shot along with this object. So we have a frame of reference here, which is very helpful in identifying the height above the horizon, and therefore we can identify the elevation angle. And once we have identified the elevation angle of this object seen from this vantage point, and then compare that to his other video, we can triangulate the location in Choctaw where these things were appearing. And you can also see, when I start this running again, you can see that his camera is still, but the object is moving. See how it's moving to the right? And then up here, let me back this up. Up higher, you'll see that there's actually another object because he was seeing multiple orbs. Okay. And you'll see as this one fades out, this one comes into view, and this is way too high to be a radio tower beacon. So see how it comes into view? And this is just a portion of the video. And then we had another case. Let me pull my slides back up. Which I found very compelling. This is a still shot taken from a video, which I'll show you the video here in a minute. This video was taken just south of Lone Wolf, down by the Wichita Mountains. And you can see here I've blown up the still, and you can see there's a definite triangular shape to this object. And when I show you the video, you'll see that it actually rotates and does some pretty weird stuff. So let me go to the video. Okay, let me start that over. Okay, can you guys see that?
There it is.
You see how it rotated?
Oh.
Now it's flat, and it's ejected something out here. Let's watch that again. See how it rotated? And then you see this object that it ejected right here. Let's see. Let me see if I can zoom in on this a little bit. Can you see that?
Could be a propulsion system, maybe.
I don't know. Oops, what am I doing here? Okay. So anyway, these were a couple of the more interesting cases that we worked last year. And let me bring my slide back up. So to wrap up, we had fewer reports than normal last year, and that was most likely due to the CMS database being offline. This created a backlog of cases, which we have successfully caught up. The majority of the identified flying objects, or IFOs, resulted from misidentifying ordinary objects such as aircraft, satellites, and camera artifacts. From the data, we can see that about 1/3 of all our reports were unknowns. The majority of the unknowns were circular in nature, and not surprisingly, they were clustered around populated areas of the state. So I hope you found the presentation informative, and I hope it gives you an idea of what the field investigators have been working on for the last year. And at this point, we'll open it up to questions.